Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Homestead Connection. It's Brenna here, and I am sitting on the phone with Steph and Kylie. And we wanted to talk for a little bit about happy, healthy winter chickens and what it takes to make them merry all winter long. So, without further ado, who can keep up their egg production?
Yeah, right. No, it's like this time of year, everybody is wanting to, what do I do to take care of my chickens? Or how are you keeping your chickens warm? Are you adding heat? Are you adding light? Like all of these things. And I think we've all had chickens for more than one winter
Mhm.
season. Well, Brenna, you're on your first merry-go-round with winter in
In
Colorado with
Colorado.
chickens, but
Yeah.
you've done chickens in previous
Yeah.
years with chickens elsewhere. So we just thought it was like really timely to talk about how we're winterizing our chicken coops and what we're doing to take care of our chickens the best that we can during these colder months. And I know a lot of our listeners have chickens, and I think honestly, there's a decent amount of our listeners who are taking care of chickens for their first winter season. And that's kind of a trip. Last year was my first full year with chickens. And that was a lot because I got chickens 3 years ago, but almost 3 years ago, but I got them in February when they were tiny chicks. So like I had them over the winter, but they weren't out in a coop yet. They were in the garage. Well, they were in my hall closet for a while in their little brooder box. And then they were in the garage. And then by the time they made it outside, it was the beginning of April and we didn't have anything to worry about. So, anyways, but yeah, we have like a little outline of things that we kind of want to make sure we touch on to make sure we kind of hit each aspect and to give us a little bit of focus and direction, and also hopefully give you guys the most amount of information that we can so you guys can take care of your chickens to the best of your ability.
Keep us
So
on track.
how are you guys? Yeah, keep us on track because oh man, it's so easy for us to like talk and get sidetracked. But what are you guys doing to winterize your coops? Like what measures have you taken or are you taking to kind of winterize your coop a little bit?
Steph, you want to go first? You want me to?
It doesn't matter. I can go first, I guess.
Okay.
I guess we technically haven't started because it's not winter yet down here.
That's true.
But
Texas is different.
what we normally do is we probably should have already done it, but we will go through and clean out like the floor area of the coop. Just clear that all out. Do a good cleaning of everything in there, and then we like to do
Mhm.
a deep bedding for the winter. On
Yeah.
both sides, we'll do it on the goat side and the chicken side. Um, for those that don't
Mm.
know, our like a barn coop thing is a, I guess, like a lean-to. Um, it has three sides, and then the fourth side is completely open, and then we have like a separating
Mhm.
fence that goes between the two bays that we have. So we have the chickens on one side and then the goats on the other. And we just do deep
Interesting.
bedding on both sides. And then come spring, we'll clear all that out. And the bottom part is really good compost because it's been sitting down there for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
that's the main thing that we do. If we know that we are going to get like a super bad cold front or we have snowmageddon coming through or whatever, then we'll go out and we have a shed that's on the north side. So it blocks a pretty good amount of wind. But if we know that there's going to be a storm coming or whatever, and the wind's going to be coming from all different directions, we'll go out and hang up tarps or extra blankets or whatever just to help block the
Sure.
airflow. Um, just to kind of insulate them a little bit more. But for the most part, our winters are not that
Yeah.
bad and they can keep themselves warm for the most part.
That's about what we do for the most part. This is our first year with the goats, and they've got a three-sided shelter, like mini barn or whatever, like you kind of described that you have for your goats and your chickens. And we do, but our chickens are in like a fully enclosed building. So we have a big shop, and in the back corner of we have a big shop. There's like a lean-to off the back of our shop that's also enclosed in. It's just like metal walls, metal roof. And then Nate squared off like a 12 by 12 space for my chickens back there. So they're fully enclosed, but there's no insulation. And then they just have like a little door that they can go in and out of. So they're generally pretty safe from like wind and stuff back there, but it still gets really cold. It's like whatever the
Mhm.
ambient temperature is outside is essentially what it is in the coop. And we've gone with the deep litter method. I use pine shavings. And so for me, what is it, the end of November when we're recording this? And literally it's the last day of November. That's wild.
Mhm.
Anyways, so I did like our last big clean out of the chicken coop earlier this month, where I didn't like clean it out completely because having that really rich composting system is what helps emit some of the warmth of like the biodegradable microbiome, whatever
Yes,
composting.
because compost
What am I
builds
trying to say
heat
here?
as it starts decomposing everything, thus you have
Yes.
radiant heat.
Thank you. Radiant heat, yes. So I didn't like clean all of it out, but I had probably a good 4 or 5 inches, 6 inches of litter just that I had through over like late summer, end of early fall. So I kind of scooped out half of it, spread the rest of the half out, and then just put a ton of fresh pine shavings down so that it's that another
Mhm.
new kind of added layer to the bedding. And that's pretty much all we do in terms of like winterizing the coop. I don't do any like
Mm-mm.
insulation or anything like that. But I know there's a lot of people who do put insulation around their coops or inside the walls of their chicken coops. So, did you do insulation, Brenna?
I did. So I've kept chickens, gosh, 6 years, but this is my first year in Colorado. Before that, it was Florida,
Mhm.
which is almost like not fair because there is no winter. I mean, we did nothing. The
Sure.
chickens did nothing. Nothing changed.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, literally, it was basically status quo. Here, though, we've already had a couple of like below zero nights. We've had, teens during the day. We're warm today. I think we're like in the 50s today. And it being my first time, I may have gone a little bit overboard. I'm not sure. So I started building up the deep litter in October. So I did a good
Yeah.
clean, and then I've started to do layers. So there's layers of pine shavings, there's layers of cut straw, there's layers of hay, and we've kind of added because
Hmm.
I do something like every other week or so. And this last time I put down some diatomaceous earth and cut straw,
Oh, yeah.
and that's what's down in the coop, and then also up in the roost area because they have like a ramp. They have the run and then the ramp. And then I put up some insulation in the roof to help keep that radiant heat in. And then I also I mean, it doesn't look pretty, but it's functional. They have visqueen up. It's 2 layers of visqueen, one on either side, all around the run. And they seem pretty happy.
What is that? Is that like that hard foam board
Yeah, I did
insulation
the Han
stuff?
phone. It's got the Pink Panther on it. I don't
Mm.
know. I
Mhm.
saw that it was
Oh, yeah,
flammable.
yeah, yeah. Okay, I know
Yeah,
what you're talking
I
about.
could probably have done something more natural, but it's what I actually had from a different project that I was doing, and so I just took it and screwed it to the roof.
Yeah.
And then in the coop area, I used that. It looks like that bubble wrap, but it's metallic. I don't know what the right term is for it,
Oh,
but it's
right.
also another kind of insulation. So that's up in the actual
Yep.
like roost area that they have. Um, and yeah, that's been about it. The If I put water in there, which I don't put water in my coop because the water will like actually create frostbite on the combs and stuff, and I've heard it was really bad. But when we the first cold snap before I pulled the water out, it was in there and it actually stayed. Thawed is too strong of a word, but it was mushy. So I feel like I pulled the water out, and so that's been gone now for a couple of weeks. But um, they
Mhm.
seem to be really happy. They don't want to leave it when it's really cold, so obviously it's warmer. And then and I can't
Mhm.
find the reader now, but I took a like a remote thermometer and stuck it out there, and I can read it wherever it is here.
Uh-huh.
So because it
My sister has one of those in her coop as
yeah,
well, which is a good
yeah, it's
idea.
not expensive. I mean, I pulled it off of Amazon, I want to say for 20 bucks, and I can measure three different places and I can do it all from inside. But it'll get down to like negative
That's
14,
nice.
negative 20 here. So I figured if I'm prepped now, I don't have to run out there in those cold nights and it'll be done.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it gets down really cold here as well, where I'm at. easily, yeah, down negative teens, negative 20s, no problem. And not all winter, but when we have these like hard, like snowmageddon or whatever, or it can get really windy where we're at. And then of course, the higher the winds, the colder the wind, like the sub freezing, feels like temperatures and stuff like that. So
Exactly.
I totally get it. That's a good, your chicken coop's nice. Do you guys do anything for the runs? Well, Steph, you don't have a chicken run, do
No,
you?
I mean, I guess technically we do, but they're not contained into the run. The goats can't get in there and the dogs can't get in there as long as we have the little door closed, but the chickens can
Hmm.
go out through the cattle panel into the pasture, but they can't go through the horse fence into the backyard. So they fly over, but still. Um,
Sure. Yeah, we have a chicken run, and it's a decent sized chicken run. My husband and I built it earlier this spring when we had issues with a fox, and we can keep our chickens contained to the run if we want to, but generally it's completely open. And we have not done anything to winterize the chicken run before. Like we've had chicken runs before where it was like, 4 foot fence and they could flutter over if they wanted to, but this is like a fully enclosed with like a roof and everything chicken run. And I'm not going to do anything to winterize it. But a lot of people to winterize their runs, like my sister, for example, she put like a huge piece of clear plastic, not like a tarp, but maybe it is, I
Visqueen.
guess, would be like a tarp, like a drop
Yeah,
cloth.
it's
Is that what
visqueen.
it
Yeah, that's
is?
what I have wrapped around my whole run too. So my run's attached to my coop.
And yeah, yeah. Okay. And that's what she did. And it basically is acting as a
Mhm.
wind barrier. So the chickens can be in and out of the run and still have the option to like peck around and be as free as they want to be within the run, but then be protected from the harsh cold
Right.
winds. But I figure our chicken coop is large enough that if the chickens just want to stay in there, they can. And if they want to come out, they can. And because we don't typically keep them confined to the run, then they can go down with the goats. They can be in the mini goat barn. They can go around the far side of the shop where there's like absolutely no wind at all. I figure they'll take care of themselves if they decide they want to come out of the chicken coop is kind of my philosophy. And I know that kind of irritates some chicken keepers. I get it. But like my chickens are not like my pets. They're just, I mean, they are. I don't want to make anybody mad, but I think you get what I'm
No, I
saying.
mean, that's kind of like back to one of our previous podcasts. I said that they're a great like gateway animal into a homestead because they're fun to watch. I
Really.
love my chickens, I really do, but they also really kind of take care of themselves. They don't really care if you're around or not. Like
Yeah.
they're happy when you're there and they're like, "Oh, great, do you have food?" But
Yeah.
they're not going if something were to happen, your chickens would survive as long as they can get outside. If they
yeah.
can't get outside,
Yep.
they will perish. So chickens are great. They're very self-sufficient animals. They're kind of like cats that way, like you love your cats, but
Yeah.
cats are like, you're around, you're not, eh, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And honestly, Kylie,
No,
to your point,
totally.
like my uncle growing up, they used to do um, English bulldogs. They used to breed them, and they had a shop
Hmm.
outside that they had basically. I don't know. It was probably like a 10 by 20 room. I don't know how big it was, but they had a room in the shop set aside for the dogs that was climate controlled. It had heat and it had AC. It had like automatic waterers and feeders in there, but they also had the
Nice.
access to go through the doggy door to go outside 24/7.
Hmm.
So if they wanted to go outside when it was snowing, they had the freedom to do that. Same thing with your chickens.
Sure.
Like, obviously, you're not going to intentionally keep them cooped up. You're going to open it so they have the option to go out if they want,
Right.
but it's up to them.
Yep. That's exactly right. It's like we leave the door gets open every morning and it gets closed every night. And if they want to come out, they can come out. If they want to stay in, they can stay in. I also feel like having the door open like that for them and giving them the option adds to the ventilation.
Mhm.
Of course, like they're in a pretty large ventilated area anyways, because while it's a sectioned off portion of the back lean-to of the shop, it's still like the ceiling is like open to the rest of the big lean-to, but I just feel like it's an extra form of ventilation, an extra way to let in fresh air and have like good air exchange. I think there was maybe only 1 or 2 days last year that I didn't open the door up at all, and it's because we had minus 40-degree temps, and I was like, nobody needs any exposure to this plant, including my chickens. So I left the coop door closed those days. But generally, yeah, they have the option. If they want the option, they'll take care of themselves if they decide they want to get out, is kind of my theory. But for the people who do have a chicken run and want to give their chickens a little added protection, doing the plastic along the sides is definitely the most popular way to
Yeah,
go.
and I left a crack, so my visqueen, the plastic, is on the inside and the outside, so it's double layer. But I left like a 2 inch crack along the top so that they had that extra ventilation, but the wind wasn't whipping through where they were; it would come up and over. I actually also put in, so my coop, the coop has a run. It has like a 6 foot run on it, and then the coop is like four by five or so. And the coop has a door, but then I also put an automatic door on my run. And that's been really great. And it's kind of fun to watch them because when it's really, really cold, they'll stay up in the actual coop and they'll kind of bed down in there. When it's kind of cold, but not really, they will peck around in their run, and I can see them poke their heads out to get water because I put water kind of close to their front so they don't have to go all the way out of the run. Um, but then when it's really, comfortable, I can see them come out. So they are able to understand what temperature they enjoy the most, and kind of, as long as you give them options, they seem to be really happy. I have not seen any lessening of my egg supply so far. I keep waiting for that to happen. But nothing so far. I'm still getting like 8, 9 eggs a day. So
For the most part, because yours and Kylie, you're muted.
yeah,
um,
Thanks.
Brenna, since you got them this year, they are more than likely not going to go through a molt, which means that they should continue to lay until.
Lay
Mhm.
pretty consistently. But Steph, did you have much of a molt this
My older
year?
birds did, yes.
Did they? So I have my birds are ranging anywhere from like pullets. I've got a couple that are still pullets, basically not laying. And then I've got others that are
Hmm.
3 years old or even older than three. I didn't have a true molt at all
Oh,
out of
wow.
any of them. And it's just been a weird. I saw on a Facebook group someone make comments about how they really wondered what their egg production was going to look like and what their chickens' health was going to look like this year because they never went through any big kind of a molt this year. Which I wasn't as surprised last year when I didn't go through a molt because most of my chickens were still like a year
Hmm.
or under. But this year I was like, more than half of my flock is 2 or 3. And I still
Oh,
didn't have
wow.
much of a molt. I don't know. I just saw rumblings that the molts across the country were not as
Yeah,
typical
my
as
so
older
usual.
I've
ones did. And I've seen a drop
Hmm.
in egg production because my older ones went through their molt, but also we have had I'm not going to call it a predator issue, but it is a predator issue because we have stray cats.
Call it what it is,
Yeah,
Steph.
we have stray
fellow
cats.
cats.
Um, they got my rooster.
Oh
They got I
no.
don't even know how many other chickens, like picking them off one by one. And it doesn't help that we have been gone most of November during the weekends hunting. But yeah, so we have that to take care of.
Yeah. That's too bad. I want to jump back to ventilation for just a second because for people who are new to keeping chickens, understanding the importance of ventilation, I think, is probably a good thing to just briefly touch on. And to me, common sense says you don't want air movement. You don't want there to be air movement. You don't want to let the cold air get into the coop. You want to keep the chickens like snug as a bug in a rug with as little outside exposure as possible. But when you have the chicken coop full of deep bedding, or even if you don't do deep bedding and you're still cleaning your coop out every day or every couple of days, you have that buildup of ammonia, which can be harmful if it gets too high. And then also, if you don't have good ventilation, you can let
Hmm.
moisture build up. And the moisture and the ammonia can be more harmful to the chickens, is more harmful to chickens than the possibility of exposure to that cold
Mhm.
air. And so that's where having good ventilation in a coop is very important because you're letting good air exchange, especially if there's like any type of ammonia buildup from their excretions. And and you're allowing the moisture within the coop to escape, and you're decreasing the risk of like frostbite or respiratory illnesses. And chickens are highly notorious for like developing respiratory illnesses. And so you figure ammonia, moisture, respiratory illnesses, frostbite, you're kind of eliminating high risks of that. So
Diatomaceous earth
that's
helps a
why
lot
having that.
too. Oops, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you up.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I don't use DE in my coop. I don't have anything against it necessarily. I just don't know if I've seen a need for it, but I'm interested to hear you talk about it a little
Well,
bit.
so I had that one scaly mite, that one scaly, remember, I think I did a
Mhm.
couple stories on my Instagram about it.
Yes, I do remember
And
that.
I have never
Yes.
seen that. So in Florida, I'd never had a molt. I never worried much about ventilation because the only thing that the coop was for was to keep them safe from predators at night. Otherwise, they were outside. So it was like kind of like a different world. But here, I had one chicken with one scaly mite issue, and it was like one scale. And after that, I just kind of have been doing it as a preventative. So I put down Saturday lime
Yeah.
and I put down diatomaceous earth in the deep beddings. And I figure whatever critters, it's not going to take care of the ammonia so much, but it will take care of any of like the parasites or the other issues that can run into it.
Yeah.
And then being in Colorado, it's so dry here. You're lucky if you get moisture, frankly. I mean, it's so incredibly dry here. It's hard to even kind of fathom unless you live here. Um, so I
Sure.
just make sure that I'm more worried about the parasites than I am necessarily about the water. But the ventilation helps. You can
Hmm.
tell if you walk into your coop or you stick your head in your coop, however it is that it works, and it smells musty and it smells nasty. That's what those
Mhm.
chickens are breathing all night long. Don't do that to
Yes,
them,
right.
So
Exactly. I learned early on in keeping my chickens that a clean chicken coop or a well-maintained chicken coop shouldn't have much of a
right.
smell, even with the deep
Mhm.
litter method. People get very strange about the deep litter method sometimes because of the quote unquote buildup of,
Mhm.
chicken
Mhm.
poop. But if you have a good composting system, like a good nitrogen rich composting system, you're not going to have odors and issues with like, you know, ill, foul
Yeah.
smelling,
Mine
whatever.
doesn't stink at all, and I've been building up since October. You know what I mean? So I'm
Yeah,
already well into it. It was pretty warm during October, and it does not it smells like hay. It smells like farm animal, but it does
yeah,
not smell like, "Ooh, I need to get out of here," or "I better not put my face in here." Like I don't have any of those problems. Even in like my coop area where they kind of all bed down, there's no problem.
sure. No, absolutely. No, I
Still
think that's
step in
good.
it, which is gross, but
Yeah.
that's
We've talked some about bedding, just doing deep litter method or, cleaning out, when we clean it out, and how it's good to have clean bedding going into the wintertime. I only use pine shavings. I don't know if we want to talk about the different things that we use in our coop or, I know there's a lot of different options out there. Hemp bedding, what is it? The coffee ground bedding that's oh so popular
Mhm.
right now, but very
I don't know that
expensive.
one.
Pine shavings, straw.
I've seen
Mine's
people
lasagna.
lasagna. That's kind of interesting, Brenna, because you're doing like the lasagna garden method, but for your
Yep,
bedding.
I am.
There's a lasagna. Is that
Yeah.
a
For
real
gardening,
thing?
yeah, it is. Yeah,
It
yeah.
is? I had no idea. I wondered about that though because I purchased a bunch of cut straw to use as bedding for my
Mhm.
goats, for them to bed down in. Because if you didn't know, goats like bed down. They create these like adorable nests, and it's just they're so snug and fuzzy and cute. So I purchased a bunch of straw bedding, and the straw generally retains heat better than like pine shavings do, but it doesn't
Mhm.
compost like pine shavings do for a deep litter style bedding. So I've been really kind of nervous to add in any other type of bedding medium besides just the pine shavings. Sorry,
Yeah.
my cat's gonna.
What's happening? Are
Okay,
you okay?
nothing. My cat almost walked across
Oh,
my laptop.
yeah. So
Anyways,
I'm kind
sorry.
of like, I don't know. I guess I kind of figure out what I'm supposed to do and then figure out where I want to break the rules. But I've been composting
Yeah.
for a long time, like composting for my garden for a long time. I like making dirt. I'm good at making dirt. I'm not so good at growing things. Um,
You can make the
And
dirt,
so like
and Rob can grow the things.
that's what happens. Yeah, I forget to water stuff. Which is funny because I don't forget to water my animals, but I forget to water plants. Um, but so the lasagna gardening method is like cardboard, you can put wood on top of that, wood shavings on top of that. It's just kind of different mediums depending on what you're kind of trying to do. And so I've been doing that with my
Yeah.
bedding. So um, I started out with just dirt floor, and then it has pine. I've done a couple of times actual straw, actual hay, because the chickens really love pecking through that and messing with that. I've put
Yes.
leaves from when my trees molted. My trees molted. When my trees dropped, I put
Bolted.
I put that in there.
Nice, Brenna, nice.
So it has different layers, and I do have cut straw in there too because it doesn't compost as fast, but it will add to the quality of the dirt because my plan is that in
Sure.
springtime I'm going to scrape it all out and I am going to put it straight into my beds and then let it mature,
Oh,
you know.
100%,
And so
100%. Whenever I clean out my coop, sorry, not to
amazing.
interrupt you, but like whenever I clean out my
Mhm.
coop, I always take all of the composting bedding, pine shavings. It goes into a separate
Mhm.
pile out kind of near one of my garden beds. I have multiple garden beds, but it goes out near one of my
Mhm.
garden beds because then I can either directly scoop it onto that correlating garden bed or I can wheelbarrow it out or like put it in the back of the truck, take it out to my big garden because that is like the
Mhm.
best. When I'm starting my seeds, I'm prepping my soil, in the springtime, or even when I was doing my plant starts, I mixed the chicken compost in with all my potting soil,
Exactly.
my seed starting soil, back in late February when I got some of my seeds
Mhm.
started because it got so
Right.
rich.
And I think that that was like my big problem with the dirt that I got this time is I didn't amend it at all because I was so late. I hadn't gotten my chickens, they hadn't really gotten started, and so, like, I didn't amend the soil, and my worms are still out there going. What's interesting about composting is, like, I've just been throwing my kitchen scraps into my worms, and my worms are still doing fine. And they're a tower, like, 4 feet off the ground, and they're like, the heat from that compost is doing so well, the heat from the rotting vegetation is doing so well that they're thriving. They're making babies in there right now, actually, last time I opened it up. But yeah, but that's what I've been doing with my deep bedding is I'm not really picky about what's in there. I've not heard of coffee though. Is that my chickens eat coffee grounds? Do your guys use coffee grounds? You're on mute, madam.
I don't think I realized I must have accidentally
Mm.
bumped it.
It's okay.
Sorry about that. So the coffee ground bedding, it's literally coffee grounds and it comes in a big like 40-pound, 50-pound bag. There's not a lot of companies that make it, but you put that down in the coop couple inches deep, 3-4 inches
Mhm.
deep, and then you sift it like you would
Like to
cat
do the
litter.
sand method?
I
But
like the sand.
yeah, like the sand method, only it's with the coffee
I don't know that
grounds.
I would wanna waste coffee
And
that
then
way.
have you guys not seen
No.
I
this?
know.
Well. So I don't know where you. I think they're like spent grounds. I'm not exactly sure about this. I'm sure that someone listening is using coffee ground bedding, and knows a lot more about it than we do because we don't use it. But like, it's truly just like a bedding medium that you purchase in large bags. I think they're spent coffee grounds that have been repurposed somehow, like collected and then is used for coffee bedding and you use it like yes like the
So,
sand
like,
method essentially and your coop smells like
All
coffee
day. Hello. Yes,
all the
I
maybe
would
time.
that's
love
why it's
that.
so popular is for, like, the deodorizing.
Uh-huh.
It's possible, but it's to me, it's I don't like the sand method. It's not a sustainable way of keeping a chicken coop for me
Mhm.
personally. I don't want something that's high maintenance. I'm not a high maintenance person. My husband disagrees, but I'm not a high maintenance person.
I disagree,
I don't
Kylie.
want my chicken coop to be high maintenance. I'm just not interested in going out and sifting my coop a couple of times a week. I would rather do
Yeah.
deep litter method, which I believe you cannot do with the
I
coffee
wonder if you can
grounds.
add them in because so my chickens eat coffee grounds. I toss my coffee grounds out into my dirt. I do it into my
Yeah,
plants. I've done it into my
it'd be
compost.
like grit.
Huh?
It's kind of, I bet it'd be kind of like
Yeah,
grit, like
exactly.
little
It's
Yeah.
I
grits.
think it's grit, and I don't know if it gives them a buzz still or what, but they seem to pick that over like, if I dump that out, they're more interested in that than they are in, like, oyster shell or anything else that I put out. Um, so I
Yeah.
don't know, but I'll probably just start tossing it into my coop, but no, it needs to dry so that the moisture doesn't get added,
Yeah.
so
So, not
Right.
on this
Right.
topic. Well, I mean, I guess kind of. Do y'all have like a set like dust bath for your chickens? I don't either.
No.
not really. I mean, I put little like, I'll make little areas and be
Mhm.
like, "Ooh, this looks like a fun place for them to dust bathe," but I don't, like, put it it's cute when it's in a tire or whatever, but I've
Mhm.
never done it. They're really cute.
My sister has a chicken coop and a run, and then in the back part of her chicken run, underneath the coop, I believe she made kind of a designated chicken like dust bathing area that's sand and dirt and whatever that they can
Mhm.
fluff up in, because the rest of her chicken run she has done mulch,
Okay.
like wood mulch, wood chips in, which also is kind of
Mhm.
self-composting because she has 5 chickens and they free range. She free ranges them in their backyard. My sister lives in an urban setting, like a true urban setting. She has true urban chickens that she cares for, and they free range in her backyard quite frequently. But when they're in the run, she likes having the mulch there as kind of like a deep litter
Mhm.
method to keep the run clean or cleaner and fresher for them. But then in the back part, she does have a set dust bathing area with like
I
sand and
wonder if
dirt
you
and
could
things.
put the coffee, like mix the coffee in with like their dusting area.
Maybe.
Like not doing it as
Probably.
actual bedding, but
Mhm.
Yeah. Just as an extra medium for them to
yeah.
You know
dust
what
bathe
my
in.
chickens love to dust bathe in? I take every so often we empty out our fire pit of all
The
the
ashes.
ashes and
Yeah,
just
the
toss
ash.
it into one of the
Yeah.
beds, and they love it.
Yep.
They love it. They'll
Yeah.
all get in there and like dust bathe together. It's big, you know, it's
That's
so much
awesome.
fun.
That's
But that'd be a good idea to try the coffee. I just throw it over there and they do whatever they want with it. I pretty much just throw kitchen scraps over the fence.
Yeah.
same. My kitchen scraps go more to my goats now than my chickens, but my goats are kind of picky. Goats generally are kind of
Mhm.
picky. I don't know how goats got this whole like garbage gut reputation, because it is
I
not
think
like
it's just
that
because they
for
get
me at
into
all.
everything, like their curiosity, and
Mhm.
they eat things that they shouldn't
Their
eat,
curiosity.
but
Mhm.
they are very
Yeah.
picky.
Yeah, definitely. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about food and water and keeping our winter
Mhm.
Oh,
chickens.
I'm here for this one.
Because that's like a whole different ball game. Like water obviously is a whole different ball game. Maybe not so much for Steph because you don't have all of the freezing temps
Right.
consistently,
Right.
right? But like for a lot of people, keeping your water from freezing is huge. And with I mean, we all need water to live. Our chickens and our animals need water to live, and so keeping our water liquid
In liquid form.
is important. In liquid form is huge. And honestly, there's I get irritated with the options that are out there for keeping water liquid. like like from freezing. Because I bought this, I was from our local farm and fleet store. It's a 3 gallon water that plugs in like to an extension cord. It keeps the water at minimum 34 degrees or something like that. So it's not freezing. And it is the most poor quality, poorly designed, like I've ever seen. It's flimsy. It wants to break open all of the time. You can't fill it up to the full three
Mm.
gallons, or the walls just bow out and all the water flows out of it. But then the other things that I've tried are like the dog water heaters. It's like a heating pad, like the Scentsy warmers or whatever, only for dog water. And those are expensive. And also, they can get the water really warm. Like, I was looking at one and it's like, oh, it keeps the water warm. And I'm like, I'm not sure I want anything that hot inside of my chicken
Mhm.
coop. So it just last year, what I ended up doing, and this I don't plan on doing this again this year. I'll tell you what I'm going to do this year in a minute. But last year I had I had four like 1 gallon waterers, and I would bring them into the inside heated part of our shop at night, and I would swap them out. I'd like put two out in the morning and bring in the two from overnight back in the morning. And then I would just be constantly rotating these 4 1 gallon chicken waterers. So every morning when I went to go let them out, they were getting
Mm-hmm.
thawed water, like fresh thawed water. And then when it was cold and those things were freezing as the day went on or overnight, I'd bring them in to thaw over the day, put the other two fresh ones out. And it was a lot of work. And I do not want to do that again this year. But last year when I bought that heated one, it was like
Oh
$57 or
wow.
something like that. And it just didn't work. It just did not
Hmm.
work. And by the time I was irritated with it enough to return it, I couldn't return it. It was clearly used. They weren't going to take it back anyways. And it just sits in the corner of my shop. So this year, what I'm doing is I purchased submersible water
Mm-hmm.
heaters. And getting those is a little bit more complicated because my husband actually has to run power, which he can. So because we don't want the extension cords exposed to the
That's right.
snow out in the run or out to my goats. So he actually has to run power, which he's going to do. Um, but that's the route I'm going this year, is having the submersible water heaters in my big. I've got a big, I don't know, 20-gallon water trough or something. I guess it's small, 20-gallon water trough for the goats. And then I have a 6-gallon tub that I'm using for the winter for the chickens for water for them. And they drink out of the goats and the goats drink out of the water thing, but I've got water in each of their separate areas and they kind of go back and forth between. But that's what I'm doing this year, which is kind of a pain in the neck, but then it'll be set up and established for this winter and winters to come.
Yeah, once it's done, it's great to get the infrastructure in.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I am actually scrolling through water heaters right now because my system's even worse. I bring out fresh water from the house every morning, and that's what they get.
Sure.
And they get that throughout the day, and if like right now it's really warm, so the water that I put out last night, I've kind of like freshened up and it'll be thawed out. It's probably thawed out right now. Um, but when it gets
Right.
really, really cold, I don't put water in the coop or in the run at all because of the amount of insulation that's in there. So it's outside, just outside the door. And I mean, I literally have to just refresh it. I mean, I work from home. I'm home. I don't leave the house.
Sure.
So I'm able to go out there and it's not that far away. But I don't, with us possibly
Still,
moving
it's,
next year and moving back home, I don't necessarily want to spend the money to put power out
yeah.
there, especially since my husband's not an electrician. Like if he could do it for free, different story, but I'd have to pay somebody. And while I really love my
Yeah.
electrician, I don't want to spend the money to do that if we're just going to be moving. And I don't know if the
Pay for Nate. Pay for Nate and I to come out and then he'll put it in for
don't
free.
threaten me with a good
It'll
time.
just cost Colorado.
You guys can come to Colorado. We'll go to Red Rocks. We'll go have a whole bunch of fun.
Perfect. No, I hear you on that. And like, there's nothing inherently wrong with like hauling water. I think a lot of people haul water and that's good and
Ooh,
fine. And I'm not above hauling water, but like, I get into this thing where, because I work full time, but my work schedule is a little bit different. And the days that I work, I'm up and out early. And sometimes I'm not home until late. Or if I'm not home until late and Nate's home taking care of the girls and doing dinner and homework and stuff, it's just one more thing to have to haul water in the mornings and then have to haul water in the evenings or have to bang out ice in the morning and to bring the ice or the water in. It's too much. It's
Mm-hmm.
not worth it. And so I'm just not doing that again this year. But I think a lot of people haul water every single morning and that's like totally fine. There's literally
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. But if there's a more sustainable option, I'm down for
I
that.
don't know. We don't have a way. We would have to run power out to, what would that be, 100 feet ish out to the chickens and the goats if we were to do anything. Most of the year,
Yeah.
like I still have not had to bust up ice in a water container
Lucky you.
at all. So we still have, I want to say it's like a 2 gallon chicken water. It might be I don't know how much it is, but one of those you fill up the thing and it
Uh-huh.
like auto refills down at the bottom. Um, we still
Yeah, right,
have
right, right.
one of those
Yes.
out for the chickens, and then we also have like it's probably a 2 gallon, just square tote thing. Um, I
Mhm.
think it's actually supposed to be like a feed bowl, but we put water in it. It doesn't matter. It's a vessel.
Oh,
For the
yeah.
goats, and we just fill it up with a water hose. We do not put water in the coop or in the barn, period. If they're thirsty, they're going to come out into the elements and get drink and then go back in and be warm. But for like the week out of the year that it does get cold enough for the water to freeze, I will actually take my water bath canner and boil water on the stove. And then I will go and
Mhm.
bust up, empty out, and pour in warm, like, I let it cool down before I take it out there because obviously boiling water is gonna be super hot. Um, but
Yeah.
we take that out there, fill up their waters. By that time, I'm not using the, like, autofill for the chickens. They're just
Mhm.
having the one bowl that's in the main pasture, just because
Right.
that would be a hassle to bust that thing up and it would break. It would break.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, bust it up, fill it back up with the boiling water because that will take longer to freeze. And then just going out like every couple hours and moving the slush. That's another thing is get when you do
Yep.
bust it up, getting the big chunks out of there. Because
Mhm.
if you have the big chunks in there, yes, you've broken it up, but they're closer together, so they're going to freeze back quicker. The less
Mhm.
like solid
Yep.
space. I don't know how to word that, but
No, I know. Yeah, I hear you. It works like an ice
hmm
pack essentially, where it's like that huge pack of ice is going to work to keep that whole
yeah,
thing a lot colder and cool it down a lot faster than if you have warm water dumped in there that needs to
right.
warm up and then freeze. It makes total sense. There was someone I was talking to who lives local to me. She keeps chickens, and she was saying one of the things that she started doing last year was, or maybe it was a couple of years ago, but I thought it was last year. Either way, she has an old crock pot that she keeps plugged in out in her chicken,
Mm,
like in the
mhm.
chicken run. And I was like, that's like a really legitimately good idea. And she has to go out and like click the button, but it's like you can click the
Mhm.
button and then it'll stay on that warm setting for what,
Yeah.
8 hours? And so if you know that your chickens have like fresh warm water 8 hours, you're cooking it twice a day or whatever. I was like, that's legitimately not a bad idea. And then she just has to bring in that,
Mhm.
ceramic insert, dump it out, fill it back up with fresh water, and then take it out. And I thought that was legitimately like not a bad
Yeah.
hack at
I've
all.
also seen
So if someone has
yeah.
power available,
Right.
I've also seen we haven't personally done it, but I know a few farmers that have. They do for their cattle, they do like the big gallon jugs, but we could probably just do a couple water bottles of salt water in the container itself, and
hmm,
then you put that in the water,
yes,
and the movement of that like moving around keeps things from freezing.
Oh, that's a good idea too.
yes, I just saw a meme or someone post that on Facebook or Instagram or something the other day, and that might be worth for me trying for the chicken or for the goats because the goats thing is big enough to have a couple of different like water bottles in it to help keep it from like
Yeah.
getting solid.
That's a really good idea. I didn't
So
think about that.
And then for food,
what about feed?
sorry.
Oh,
For food,
sorry.
I mean, currently we have our chicken feed and a deer feeder, and that's been working amazingly.
I think
Yeah,
about you
yeah,
every time I feed my chickens, every time. I'm like,
Oh,
I need a deer
yeah.
feeder right now.
Steph has her chicken feed and a deer feeder, so it like sprinkles the feed out all over where her chickens are pecking it and free ranging.
mhm.
Brilliant, genius.
It
But
just
for
blows my
me, yeah,
mind.
I don't. I think it's like the most brilliant. Steph comes up with the most
That
brilliant
was
hacks
Bo.
ever, honestly.
That was all Bo.
Um,
Go,
well,
Bo.
congrats, Bo. Good job. For me, for feed, I mean, I don't really do a whole lot different in terms of like containment. Like
Mhm.
it stays in the same feed container, and I sometimes I put my chicken feed in the run, like in a container, and sometimes I just like throw it out in the yard for them. It just I don't know, it just depends on how I'm feeling, I guess. But I completely changed my feed. I completely changed my feed starting in October. So my chickens, I will feed them typically like a corn-free, soy free, non GMO chicken feed, you know, spring, summer, early fall. But as soon as we get into late fall, early winter, and then into like the colder parts of the spring, I completely change their food up. Well, I don't completely change it. I add a lot to it, I guess. I keep the same base, corn-free, corn-free soy feed, non-GMO, which is silly because then to it, I end up adding in a bunch of corn, like
Mhm.
crack corn, and I add in a bunch of black soldier fly
Mhm.
larvae. I add in a bunch of red pepper flakes and oregano, and I add in black oil
Mhm.
sunflower seeds. And sometimes I add in oats. It depends. Sometimes I'll just add in corn, and then sometimes I'll add in like chicken scratch that has like the oats and the corn and stuff in it. It just kind of depends on what I'm getting. But by doing that, I've like really increased the amount of protein they're getting with the black oil sunflower seeds and the black soldier fly larvae. So they're still getting that base of the chicken feed, like I
Mhm.
give them all year, but they're getting the black oil sunflower seeds. They're getting the black soldier fly larvae. And then that really helps with protein. And then by adding the corn and the oats, which I don't always do, but when the chickens are trying to keep themselves warm, their caloric expenditure is just through
Mhm.
the roof trying to stay warm. So I think a lot of times we see egg production drop because they're working harder at their survival skills and growing feathers after molting, and they're not putting that energy into egg production. But for my chickens, at least last year, I did have a drop in my egg production, but not as much as I would have thought I did. And I'm almost certain it's because they had high protein and they were getting a lot more calories from the oats and the corn to help with that, balance out the caloric expenditure. So they had the energy to put into egg production on top of staying warm and just like surviving in the
Mhm.
cold. And the red pepper flakes, they say, the internet says, it helps to keep them warm from the inside out because it's, a spice, but then also it helps with like parasite resistance and stuff like that. Between that and the oregano, it's like natural deworming, natural antibacterial, like natural kind of what am I looking for here? Almost like an antibiotic and parasite like resistance
It's like
situation. So
anti-parasitic.
that's what I've been doing, and it seems to work pretty well for me. And I can't recall the ratios off the top of my head. I have it written down in a planner, like my planner on the kitchen counter. I can put my recipe on Instagram or
Mhm.
something for people if they want to try it out themselves.
I add all of those things. Well, so I don't add the black soldier fly larva to my feed. I just throw it out for them. I try and give them things to mess with. So I get them like those big blocks with like the molasses and the seeds, um, kind of all
Yeah,
mixed in. You can make them yourself. You can buy them. Depends on, your time limitations.
right.
But I also throw those out so that they can kind of find them and peck for them and look for them and stuff. But I also add kelp. I found a recipe for chicken feed a while ago, and they added kelp to it, and you can get kelp from Azure really
Yeah.
cheap. And so I threw kelp in with mine, and
Hmm.
it seems to also kind of help with the nutrients, the chloroform, and then also some of the protein too.
Yeah, kelp has a lot of trace minerals to it. People are like, why
Mhm.
kelp? There's a lot of iron and a lot of trace minerals that are naturally found in kelp that aren't typically in our American diet or in, sorry, my dog is going crazy, typically in our American diet or in our animals'
Mhm.
diet either. So that's a free choice kelp. I've got free choice kelp for my goats. I have not given it to my chickens, but to scoop it into their feed makes a lot of sense, and that's not a big deal
Yeah,
at
I buy it
all.
in bulk, Mylar bag it up, and stick it because I have a chicken feed area of my Mylar bags, and I have a human feed area of my Mylar bags. And I mean, it's food grade. You could eat it, I could eat it. It's just bagged up for the chickens and the amount that I like to throw out for them. And I do eat those just as a human feed thing. You can get like seaweed snacks, and they're really
Mhm.
good, and they're really good
Hmm.
during the winter too.
Yeah. Yeah. But I feel like obviously them having water, having food that's high in protein, high in carbs, so that they continue like with the caloric needs and the protein needs they need for egg production, I feel like really helps to curb the decrease in egg
Hmm.
production. But then I know there's the hot topic of conversation amongst chicken keepers is, do you add artificial light to your coop or not to like quote unquote extend the daylight hours? Because if they have a longer laying like day to lay, they'll potentially lay more and stuff like that. But that's a very polarizing thing where some people are like, yes, I add light to my coop, and no, I don't. And I understand why people don't add light to their coop, and I typically don't. I have a nightlight in my coop all of the time for my chickens so
Aw.
they can see at night if they need to. Just like a little nightlight.
Kylie.
But I'm just saying, you
Because then you
never
just know where they're
know.
going when they go
And
potty.
also, but also like for predators and stuff, because if it's light, if there's a little bit of light in there, I mean, I don't know how predators going to get into our coop necessarily, but I'm just saying. But
What does it look like? What's the night light?
obviously,
Is it cute? Does it have like a cute little thing? You need a chicken light night light.
no, but now that you're thinking of it, I should get one of those ones that's like the chicken with the like that's laying an egg and then the egg
Yes,
lights up. I should
you
get them one
should.
of
They'd probably
those.
really like that.
Steph is judging me so hard.
Oh.
Oh, that's so funny. No, but I have a little nightlight in there. And I don't typically add like a heat lamp, or I don't add in like a big artificial light or anything like that. I think there's a lot of danger actually in adding in a heat
Mhm.
lamp because number one, if it breaks, you're screwed. If that drops and catches anything on fire, you're screwed. But secondly, if your chickens are used to that warm ambient temperature and then all of a sudden you lose power or that light bulb burns out and they go through the shock of being exposed to that cold, then
Yeah.
they're going to die. I mean, the perk of like all animals change with the seasons, they acclimate with the seasons. That's how God created them. And, I think that there's a lot of well wishing chicken keepers who add in
Sure.
heat lamps and stuff. And I can understand why people want to do that, but I think there's a lot of danger in that. But we don't add in any type of light. However, I know there's a lot of people who do, and I view my chickens as very utilitarian. Like they're not my pets. Like I said, they're not my pets. I love them, but they serve a function and a purpose for my family. And there are times, especially last winter, I was like, I think I do want to just throw in an incandescent light bulb or an LED light bulb to give them a full day to lay. And yeah, it's probably going to shorten their life expectancy, but the purpose of these chickens on my homestead is to provide me and my egg customers with eggs. And so, there's been that school of thought too. And I don't know. I didn't end up adding light last year, but it's something I've definitely considered.
I don't. I mean, I'm a big believer in cycles and everything is cyclical for a reason. So I like the idea of them getting a bit of a respite, getting it just go I'm big into like natural cycles. So if I live in a place that gets dark at 4, which I do, and it makes their
Right.
egg production go down, I'm not I get enough eggs with the lowered egg production that I don't have to worry about it. If I had egg customers, if it was my source of income, I may feel differently about it. Um, but just because of where I am and where I'm sitting with my homestead right now, I don't feel strongly that I need it. I get why people do it, and I don't
Sure.
think there's anything wrong with. I mean, there's nothing morally wrong with it. You're keeping them alive a
Yeah.
lot longer than they would be in the wild. They are going to get eaten so fast in the wild.
Yeah.
So to me, it's not like there's like no big to do about it. I just enjoy natural cycles of stuff. And so when they stop
Yeah.
laying, guess where they're going?
Freezer camp.
They're going to go to freezer camp.
Teresa.
So I'm not, lest anybody be like misconstrued and thinking that I'm bleeding heart. No, it's the way that they go.
So, how do I want to word this? um, we don't do light. And honestly, in our American society, we have forgotten that so many things are seasonal. Eggs are a seasonal food, and we've forgotten that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We expect to have strawberries and dragon fruits and grapes and apples and oranges and bananas and pineapples year round to be available for us. And that's just not how it works. It's just not how it
Mhm.
works. So
Yeah.
if you if you have an egg business, like I know Kylie does, and I know other people that do, then
I mean, I sell eggs to like 8 people on
It's
a
still
regular
money.
basis. I don't have
yeah,
like a
It's
yeah.
still money
production.
Well,
though. That's still income.
that's
It's
true.
still money. Yeah. I mean, it supports our
Yes.
chickens. Our chickens don't
Right.
See,
cost us
there's a
money.
reason for it.
If the way I see it, if you want to continually know that you are going to have eggs, every 6 months you need to be getting new chickens. Every 6 months.
Sure.
Because
Well, the flocks keep coming around like they knew I would. So there's that. No, I'm just
no,
kidding.
you're
Sorry,
good.
Steph, keep going, keep going.
Because it's roughly, give or take, 6 months before a chicken starts to lay. And if you're getting chicks every 6 months, then you are going to continually be in that cycle. When you have a group that is ready to start molting, you're going to have a younger group that's just starting to lay, or one that this is their 6 month or their 1 year mark and it's not time for them to molt yet because they're not old enough. So you're still going to have a sustainable source of eggs if you don't want to succumb to just the natural cycle of eggs being a seasonal thing. Another thing you could do is preserve the eggs, whether that is
Yeah.
freeze drying them or scrambling them in muffin tins and popping those out and putting those in the freezer after they've frozen. So you have one egg per muffin
Yeah.
tin, and there you go. Or water
Water bath
glassing
canning.
Water
them.
glassing.
Hmm.
There's a few different ways that you can
Yeah.
preserve the eggs during the summer when you have an overabundance and you're like, what do I do with all of this? I'm tired of eggs. There's plenty of things that you can do.
Yeah.
So,
I said water
Absolutely.
bath canning, but
I
I meant
did water
water glassing.
yeah.
Don't water bath can your eggs. They'll be omelets.
I water glassed 3 gallon jars of eggs. I think I have somewhere in the vicinity of like 130 eggs ish that are water glassed. And the intention for that is that it's my family. I can use those to
Mhm.
Mhm.
bake with. I do tons of baking in my house, so I can bake them. I can scramble them up for us to eat if we want to. I can make quiche and blah 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 whatever with them, like I do already. And then the eggs that my chickens are laying can then go to my egg customers. And my egg customers know that there's a chance they're not going to have eggs like they do during the spring and summer months. But then my egg customers can continue to get, the fresh eggs. Then I can use the ones that I water glassed back in August, September is when I water glass those up.
Yeah.
That sounds right. I
So
chickened out of water glassing
yeah,
eggs. I just kept on using them.
chickened out.
Yeah, I did. I chickened out. They yeah, I had them going, but then I was like not saving them up fast enough, and then I was worried about the ones being old, and so I just said forget it because I went through a
Yeah,
fox issue too, and a fox got all of my ducks. So none of my ducks made it to freezer camp, unfortunately. And then they got a fair amount, I think like 4 or 5 of my chickens when it was all said and done. So now the fox
Mm.
is no longer getting
sure.
them. I know, it was interesting. I was
That's
kind of
good.
bummed about it, but that fox was really pretty. I really enjoyed watching him. He was so pretty. And then the dogs and I had such a good time chasing him off. I find
Silver linings. Silver linings.
I just ran over my
That's
dog. Hold
okay.
on.
Oh, poor thing. It's okay. Well, the last kind of thing to touch on quick, I think is, and this is just really brief, I feel like is just monitoring for frostbite,
Mhm.
signs and symptoms of frostbite. And Steph, I know you probably don't have to deal with frostbite in your area. And I haven't actually had to deal with frostbite where I live, even having like sub freezing temperatures and like even down into the negative 40s last year. And I feel like part of that was because, my chicken coop had good deep bedding that was already established and they were able to get away from the wind and all of these different things, but a lot of people are worried about frostbite, and frostbite's a
Mhm.
very real thing, especially with those chickens that have like very large combs, like with the California whites and the
Yeah.
roosters and
That's what I
things
was
like
gonna
that.
say is it's
So
if you know that you live in a very cold climate, one thing to pay attention to when you're picking out your chicken breeds is, are they physically cold hardy? And also, how
yep.
far away from their body is their comb? Because with chickens like wine dots, they have the rose style comb, so it is like half an inch at tops from their
Hmm.
head. So they have all of that body heat that's radiating
Yep.
off, that's keeping their comb from freezing, and it keeps
Yep.
keeps that issue away.
No, for sure. Last year, and this is kind of, I don't know if there's actual benefit to this. I found very polarizing opinions online, but I have two California whites and I have a rooster that have combs that I feel are at risk
Mhm.
for frostbite. And so last year I put on, and I'm sure that there's people listening that are gonna like be really upset at me saying this, but I put Vaseline on their combs, and there's a school of thought that that helps to insulate and protect the comb. And then there's the other school of thought that no, that actually encourages the comb to be colder because that Vaseline is like also colder. I don't know. I didn't have any issues with frostbite even during those negative 40 days. And I only put the Vaseline on those like days that it was so cold, but
But
still
my
just
thing is, like, with
one of those
frostbite,
things.
isn't that tied to the moisture content? So if you're putting the Vaseline, that's a moisture barrier, which is preventing the moisture from settling on the comb, plus the cold temperatures, which is why you don't
Yeah.
want to have a waterer in your coop because
That's
of
right.
the moisture content. So I've
Yep. And that was
mhm.
my logic. That was exactly my logic, was that I'm creating a barrier, I'm creating a form of insulation, and it's like a moisture barrier to the comb. So that was my logic.
You should knit little hats for them.
It didn't hurt
Oh
me.
god.
Knit
Say
little
again?
hats for them, like little like balaclavas that they can put on, or however you say that word. You know what I mean? That's right.
Indeed.
You can just
That is
stick
so
out their
funny.
little faces, and everything else can be behind it. What does frostbite look like? I never had to deal with it in Florida, and I lucked out last year. I got my chickens when it was still really cold, and we had a couple of freezing days because it snows up into June here. So, like, we had a lot of really cold days when I had my chickens outside, and I didn't have to deal with frostbite, but I
Hmm.
had something like 31 chickens or something ridiculous. So, I think just sheer body heat kept them all.
Yeah, no, for sure. Frostbite generally looks like it starts as black. So frostbite is black on humans and chickens. Um and it's pretty much on their comb and their wattles is where you're going to want to watch for it, and it starts as a very tiny black dot or black speck, typically at like one of the points of their
Mhm.
comb, and then the black grows and spreads, and it can affect the whole comb, or it can affect just a small portion of the comb or a small portion of the wattle. There's really good pictures of it on, if you do like Google
Okay.
image, some of them are pretty
Mhm.
gruesome, like worst case scenario type situation, but it typically starts at the very tip of the comb or the very tip of the wattle. It's not, you're not getting like black in the middle of the comb or anything like
Mhm.
that. So
So, like humans, it's your extremities. It's
yeah.
just that that's their
Right.
extremity is their comb.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
One thing on the topic of like cold and frostbite though, because chickens' legs and toes are, prone to frostbite as well. And my husband built our coop, my roosting bars, so they're 2x4s that
Mhm.
are flat with the flat 4-inch section, not like so it's laying
So their feet
horizontal,
can
not
sit
vertical, I
flat
guess is
instead of
exactly. So then they can like settle down on their feet to keep their feet warm, and then tuck their heads under their wings to keep their face and combs warm and stuff like that. And so I think if you're like designing a coop or wanting to make modifications to your coop, and initially my husband used old metal piping for my roosting bars when he first made my coop. And he didn't know, it was very well meaning of him. There he got
I mean,
like shower curtain rod holders basically, and used that, and it worked. But as soon as the weather started to turn, we modified this was 2 years ago now, he modified the run so that we didn't have to worry, or the nesting
I mean, if
bars,
that's what
roosting
you have on
bars, so that
hand,
we
you
didn't
could
have.
wrap them.
Mhm. I was
Yeah,
gonna
true,
say,
we could.
get pool noodles and just slice them
Yeah.
down the middle and stick them on there, you know?
Yeah.
Well, they might eat
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that's true, they might eat that. Don't do that, actually.
True. They
They
really
probably will eat
probably
it. They got
would.
into my styrofoam pumpkin outside, and, like, and then I was finding glitter poops for, like, weeks.
But yeah, that's when it comes to like frostbite, combs, wattles, feet, keeping the moisture out of the coop is important. And then yeah, giving their feet a flat surface to roost on so they can keep their feet warm is the best way to go about that. And like they'll acclimate with the temperature. If they have what they need, they're gonna do
Mhm.
just fine. And it's kind of stressful keeping chickens that first winter. And sometimes it's stressful keeping chickens any winter because the weather's unpredictable and having chickens is unpredictable and you just never know. But, it's like you do what you can and equip yourself with the knowledge that you can and it'll
Give
be
yourself
fine.
a little bit of grace because they would get eaten fast in real life. So you're
Yeah.
giving them a better life than what they would have out in the wild.
Just true. Yeah,
Everything
I
loves
agree. I
chicken,
agree.
including chicken.
So, speaking of like the wattle with frostbite, wouldn't really the only way to prevent their wattle from getting water on it would be the nipple waterers, but at the same time, how do you keep those from freezing?
Yeah. No, I wouldn't even mess with that. I mean, they never submerge their entire heads. And yeah, like my rooster has large wattles. I've got a barred rock root who has just huge comb, huge wattles. He's gorgeous. And yeah, his wattles get wet sometimes, but I mean, it can't be
Yeah,
helped and they know how to dry themselves off and, shake their heads off and put their heads under their wings and all the things.
yeah.
So anyways, I think that's it for our list, though, of all the things we wanted to
Woo!
cover.
And we stayed on task. I'm so proud.
Um, There's a comment section on Spotify. So we primarily host our podcast through Spotify. You can listen to it everywhere. But if you watch us on Spotify or listen to us on Spotify, first of all, you can watch the video podcast on Spotify, which is a lot of fun. We're incorporating more and more video podcasts. And someday, hopefully, we'll be transitioned over completely to video podcasts. But also on Spotify, there's like a Q&A, poll, question box. And we'd love to hear your feedback. Like, is this your first winter keeping chickens? Like, what kind of a climate do you live in? What are you most worried about? So leave us a comment in the question box, the little comment box. Like, vote in the poll. Let us know if it's your first winter or not. And definitely review. Like, leave a review. If you like the podcast, if you like this episode, leave us a review. We love to hear your
And if you're on
feedback.
Instagram, come hang out with us on Instagram. Like we're really happy to chat
True.
with you at any point in time on Instagram as well.
Yeah. I wish Instagram had more of like a community
Hmm.
interaction type situation outside of just messages and outside of like just commenting on
Yeah,
photos where there's like,
it is
I don't
nice that
know.
they notify
It was
us
just
though. You know what I mean? And so then we can pop into the comments, like, because I'm sure you're going to post some sort of like announcement that
something.
this is coming up. Sorry, I was looking for the word. Some sort of
Yeah.
announcement that this is dropping, and then people can reply back to that. I don't know. I just like talking to people.
Yeah.
Talk to
I
me.
agree. So do I.
I
So do
don't
I.
leave my house.
So cool. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for sharing all your info, Brenda and Steph.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Have a
You
good
too. Back
day.
to work.